Before proceeding with the formal business of the meeting, I would ask Imam Professor Masood Akhtar Hazarvi to lead us in prayer. Would all members please stand?
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وإذ قال إبراهيم رب اجعل هذا البلد آمنا واجنبني وبني أن نعبد الأصنام رب إنهن أضللن كثيرا من الناس فمن تبعني فإنه مني ومن عصاني فإنك غفور رحيم ربنا إني أسكنت من ذريتي بواد غير ذي زرع عند بيتك المحرم ربنا ليقيموا الصلاة فاجعل أفئدة من الناس تهوي إليهم وارزقهم من الثمرات لعلهم يشكرون ربنا إنك تعلم ما نخفي وما نعلن وما يخفى على الله من شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء الحمد لله الذي وهب لي على الكبر إسماعيل وإسحاق إن ربي لسميع الدعاء رب اجعلني مقيم الصلاة ومن ذريتي ربنا وتقبل دعاء ربنا اغفر لي ولوالدي وللمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب صدق الله العظيم. I have recited a few verses from the Holy Quran from the chapter Abraham. Remember when Abraham, peace be upon him, prayed, "My Lord, make this city of Mecca secure and keep me and my children away from the worship of idols. O my Lord, they have caused many people to go astray. So whoever follows me is with me, and whoever disobeys me, then surely you are still all forgiving, most merciful. Our Lord, I have settled some of my offspring in a barren valley near your sacred house, our Lord, so that they may establish prayer. So make the hearts of believing people inclined toward them and provide them with fruits, so perhaps they will be thankful. Our Lord, you certainly know what we conceal and what we reveal. Nothing on earth or in heaven is hidden from God. All praises for Allah, who has blessed me with Ismail and Ishaq in my old age. My Lord is indeed the hearer of all prayers. My Lord, make me and those believers of my descendants keep up prayer. Our Lord, accept my prayers. Our Lord, forgive me, my parents, and the believers on the day when the judgment will come to pass. This is the translation of the verses I have recited. Okay?
Please be seated. Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Council. Before we begin, would members please remember sit in the allocated seats, silence their mobile phones, stand up when proposing and seconding items, switch microphones on to speak and off immediately afterwards. If there is an emergency, turn left out of the chamber, follow the green exit signs to the main town hall entrance and assemble in St George's Square. Please note this meeting is being live streamed to the public Any members of the public present are entitled to take photographs, film, audio record and report on the business held in public, but must not act in a manner which is disruptive. If they do so, they may be asked to leave. Before proceeding with this evening's agenda, I have the pleasure in inviting Professor Rebecca Bunting, Vice-Chancellor of the University of Bedfordshire, to make a presentation to the Council.
I hope that's on and I hope you can hear me. Thank you very much for your introduction. And thank you for the invitation just to have a few minutes to tell you a little bit about the university. The last time I spoke to a council meeting was in 2018 and it was the World Cup. And all the councillors were looking at their laps the whole time I was speaking to them because they had their mobile phones on because England were in the playoff for third place. And of course we lost 2-0 to Belgium, I think, I remember well. And I did see grown men cry. So I hope that's not going to happen in this chamber this evening. Now, Vice-Chancellors often go into their communities to show off about their universities, to boast with lots of facts and figures. And if I were going to do that this evening, what would I say to you about our wonderful University of Bedfordshire? Well, I would tell you that we are one of the best recruiters of international students in the country. We recruit from over 100 countries, although that I think will go down now with Brexit because not many students are coming from from Europe anymore. We have 19 partners overseas in 13 countries, so we really do have global reach. 60% of our research that was submitted for assessment was judged to be world-leading, international in class. We are in the top 5% of universities for continuing professional development support for businesses and skills support. We're the fourth, you see I'm getting into my stride here, we're the fourth in the country for successful graduate startups. We are the second in England for environmental sustainability. We have a platinum award, the best you can get, and we are up there with the top universities in terms of our credentials. And just while I'm showing off, 250,000 books, 1/3 e-books and e-journals, £54 million spent in the last 6 years on our estate and capital. But those are facts. They're interesting and I like to say them. But the real work of the university, the grind, if you like, of the university is in our mission. It's in the vision we have for the university. It is about changing lives and it's about changing society because we are changing people's lives. We do at our university the heavy lifting on widening participation, on widening opportunity, on giving opportunity to young and older people who have missed out, not had those opportunities, not been supported. We are a vibrant, ambitious university. We're ambitious for our students because they're not ambitious often for themselves. Nobody has encouraged them to be ambitious in their careers. So we celebrate diversity, but not just in terms of ethnicity. Of course, we are one of the most diverse universities, but age, mature. Actually, to be mature in our sector, you have to be over 23. So I think that makes quite a lot of us extra mature or something. But we have a lot of mature students in the university. They have families. They have caring responsibilities. They have jobs. We have students who have mortgages to pay, rent to pay, families to bring up, children to take to school, all the daily commitments, and yet here they are studying for a degree. We have students from care, many students from care, and many students who disclose a disability. So these are not the kinds of students that people generally, and politicians in particular, often think about when you talk about students. You know, there's a stereotypical image, isn't there, of 18-year-olds, come from school, done A-levels. And that means that our university has to be different. We have to provide a different level of support and encouragement. And we have to make sure that our students have that ambition to do the things they think they can do. But they do face challenges. When we had the pandemic, we discovered students didn't have broadband at home. They were living their lives on small phones. They couldn't do their studies. And we had to send out laptops. You know, we had to do all sorts of things to support their studies. I'm subsidising food at the university. You know, we're giving them £1 for a hot breakfast and hot drink, £2.50. By the way, you can't have this if you pop in. This is just for the students. I had to say this to the staff as well. Sorry, it's just for the students. You know, a hot lunch. And students are lapping this up. We're having to employ more staff to feed the students, which is just an indication, isn't it, of the cost of living crisis that hits us all, but how much it hits our students as well. And of course, £500,000 in our hardship fund doesn't go very far, you know, for those emergencies that students have. And of course, mental health challenges are increasing. I'm sure you're all aware of that, but they're certainly hitting our students. So what matters to them? They put all their energies against that background, against the challenges they face, and what matters is jobs. That's why they're here. It isn't a rite of passage for most of our students. You know, you go to university. It is a very instrumental experience because they know it will bring change to their lives, change to their children's lives, because there's a graduate in the family and a graduate who will get a graduate level job. So we are very much at the university about career-powered education, and we're about to launch a new marketing campaign, a new bit of a brand around that whole idea of career-powered education, because this is what our students want. We've moved into apprenticeships big time. We've moved into higher technical qualifications big time, because these are about vocation, they're about work. And the majority of our students come from quite a small geographical spread in concentric circles around Luton, you know, going round and round and round outside Luton. Yes, from London, reaching into London, but very much a university for our locale with global reach. And that global reach is so important to have that mix of cultures on campus. So place, and this is my key message and then I'll stop, place matters very much to us as a university. It isn't about the university sitting outside, doing what it wants to do, and, you know, occasionally coming and showing off about a few facts. We are very much embedded in the life of this town, and I hope in future this city, perhaps one day. We are very much embedded in that. And our students live here, they want to work here. We need graduate level jobs. We need the success of Luton to keep our talent and not to let it be soaked back into London or to Milton Keynes or wherever. Sorry if you're from Luton or Milton Keynes, but you know, we want those students, those graduates to stay here with their talent to give back. So we are so pleased to be involved with you in our civic agreement. I know you've had some discussion about that a little while ago, I think, in the chamber. But our work to support economic regeneration, economic growth, our work with businesses, particularly small businesses, SMEs, is incredibly important. Working across all the major assets like, you know, the football club, where we are the education sponsor, the airport with the growth and so on. All of these things are very important to us because they're important, you know, to you. And that's what matters. We are about producing the skilled workforce, not just for the public sector, although we do go big on the public sector, but not just the public sector, but that skilled workforce is very much part of this new vision that we have for career-powered education. We want to maximise our research to support Vision 2040. We want to work with you on health inequalities, and I mean, I shouldn't say we want to, we're heavily involved in that research particularly. So all of that work we do has an impact for you, and I feel that's very important that as a university we are at the heart of your vision for the 2040 version of what Luton can and will be. And I'm very happy to show off about that, even if I'm not showing off about the statistics that most Vice-Chancellors, and I have to say they're mostly men, may I say. There are not very many women who are Vice-Chancellors of universities, but there's a lot of showing off goes on. But that's where we're coming from. It is a vision and a commitment to social change and social mobility, which is so important. But finally, the challenges are great. Our fees have not increased for 13 years now. The 9,000 fee is now worth about just under 6,000. And, you know, it's not going to go up. So we've got to do more with less, and I know that is the general gist of things these days. But everyone's fishing in the same pool now. All universities are fishing in the same pool for students, and that is a great challenge. Government policy for international students is damaging to my university. And you will have probably picked up the things about not being able to bring dependents, potentially removing the opportunity to work for 2 years after you graduate. These are very damaging to the brand of, you know, international study in the UK, and they very much affect our university. We've got pension cost increases. I won't bore you with all of these because I know these are things you talk about all the time, but they're there. And don't talk to me about my utility bill because it is absolutely eye-watering. But we plough on, and we plough on in partnership. We have many partners. We're a very partnership-y kind of university because we can't do all this on our own. We have to work with other agencies, other partners, other organisations. And you are one of those that is really one of the most important. And I'm really grateful to Robin and all his team who've supported the development of our civic agreement, and look forward to more activity, more successes as we work together to bring to life all those things that we say in the vision for Luton. So thank you very much.
Members of the Council, do you have any questions for the Vice-Chancellor? Okay. Okay. Sorry, first I've got Councillor Burnett.
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation. Really appreciate it. And yes, you've been working very closely with the arts as well.
Yes,
you've got
absolutely.
arts and culture.
Absolutely.
Yes, I've done really well. My question to you is with regards to the government's change in policy for overseas students, because your university has been one of the main anchors that has enabled the town to become very more diverse and the breadth of diversity. And I have picked up within your sector that some universities are now significantly looking at their budgets. I know of one that's made redundancies.
Yes.
And that will affect the offer you give to local students and elsewhere. So I'm a bit concerned. So can you share the how you're grappling with the challenge? I think we would appreciate that, and I know there's confidentiality, but can you please tell us how you're rising to the challenge with what the government's laid before you? Thank you.
That's a really interesting and big question, so I'll try and be very quick because I'm taking up too much of your time this evening. And happy for you to come into the university, for any of you to come into the university if you want to come and see what we're doing or have a chat or whatever, just a coffee. We do very well with international, much better than many other universities, and we've maintained that. But we are starting to see a bit of a drop, and this is because of the new policies emerging. You only have to talk about the possibility of removing the post-study work visa, and it shakes the system. And you know, you see a drop in the number of students who are applying across the whole sector, and we've already started to see that. But you have to manage, don't you, with what you've got. You have to manage your money the very best you can. We really focus on the student experience, on making sure that the quality of education is strong, that we're preparing students for the right jobs, and we have to shape our business according to our income. But we've been so successful in international recruitment that we've given ourselves some, a bit of a, what do you call, a fighting chest, if you like, to be able to do that work, to be able to do some reshaping. We're always introducing new courses, and we close unsuccessful ones, because that happens too. And we manage the budget, but it is challenging. And the whole sector now, every university is challenged, let's use that euphemism, financially. There's nobody really who isn't, because £6,000 equivalent doesn't go very far in training and developing a student. Especially when you give bursaries, we give very generous bursaries to students, so all of that reduces your income, of course. But we manage so far, we plough on.
Okay, thank you. Next I've got Councillor Aslam Khan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Hello.
Rebecca, thank you very much for a fantastic presentation. And I, as you know, as your mature person involved in your team, seeing the great work the university does and the positive impact it makes. As you know, digital economy is changing the way we live, travel, shop, and obviously go out. Our high streets are changing dramatically. Since we have great research facilities and a lot of knowledge at hand, do you think there's potential of doing a piece of work is looking at how could we make our high street more sustainable? Daytime is not too bad. The footfall is probably better than some of the areas, but nighttime is very poor. So do you think that there is a joint piece of work that you could do to help our high street more sustainable and perhaps improve our nighttime economy?
What a great pitch. Yes. Well, of course. I mean, this is part of the civic agreement in a way. There are some big headlines in the civic agreement, but the detail of them is there are lots of things that we need to, we've only just done this, of course, it's quite fresh, really, but that we need to start building activities, projects into the agreement that we haven't currently got. We've got a lot running at the moment. I think we've got about 60-something projects running at the moment. It wouldn't surprise me if one of them wasn't about working with businesses in terms of economic regeneration and high streets, because there is a lot of research about high street regeneration at the moment. So nothing's off the table in a sense. We're very keen to be involved. We can't fund it, that's the problem. It's something we've got to do with the resource that we've got, but brains put together can do a great deal, can't they? And the student voice as well, and the user voice is really important, isn't it? It's not just about us deciding how do we make the evening economy vibrant and work. We've got to listen to what people want. It's quite difficult to get a view from students about what they want. Our students are not typically those looking to go out to nightclubs and things like that. I mean, I'm sure some of them do, and I have seen one or two who've been drunk, but on the whole, they're quite serious and they go home to their families or they go into their halls of residence and study. She said with her fingers crossed, because that's what I really want them to be doing. But you're right that a vibrant town, day and night, is important, because this is where students are for 3 or 4 years of their lives. It's what they will remember in later life when they talk about their university years. So you're absolutely right, it's an important thing, and I'm sure it's something we can pick up through our discussions with the civic agreement.
Thank you. Next I've got Councillor Adisola.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Rebecca, for your presentation. I sat down there listening to you, a proud product of University of Bedfordshire, where I did my master's in applied computing and information technology some years back. Thank you for reading out those first. And of course, as a one-time international student as well, I do still relate with international students who are willing to come to Luton and of course contribute to this wonderful town of ours. One thing that they have mentioned, you've mentioned one of it, which is the government policy, the central government. The other thing is the residents' bit of it. I know it's a bit of a challenge, especially for our town. What are your challenges in that aspect concerning residents of those coming around?
Do you mean in relation to government policy on?
I mean to the students coming.
International students?
International students, yeah.
Well, I think it's the question's kind of been raised in a slightly different way already. It is, we have a strong international policy. We are diversifying some of our recruitment activity because we've been perhaps over-reliant on 1 or 2 countries, and it only takes government policy in that country to have a negative effect on us. It's not just our country's policies. So we are spreading our risk, I think, which is the business way of saying it, and looking at a wider range of countries that we can recruit from, including America, where we've never been before. But we have to lobby. I mean, I spend a lot of my time, as I'm sure many of you do, lobbying politicians, lobbying about what the reality is and how much damage can be done through policy which really doesn't work. Students should not be part of the net migration figures. That is, I'm sorry if that offends anybody here, but they come and go. They're not affecting in that way, and that is one of the things that Vice-Chancellors have been pushing with both main political parties. But of course we're going into a year of great uncertainty with the election on the horizon. So, you know, what will happen then and how that will all pan out in terms of policy, we will have to wait and see. I've probably taken up too much of your time, have I?
Are there any further questions? Okay. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor. I want to let you into a little secret. I used to be an international director at the university until 2017. It's great to see that the university is doing so well still in the international markets, and that trend is
Well,
continuing.
thanks to you. Yes.
In part. But one question I would like to ask is what more can we do to encourage the growth of home students? You know, we can't have too much balance
No,
going on the
no,
international market,
No.
and we do need to do more to encourage the home students, and perhaps wider than the 30-mile radius around
Absolutely, yes, yes. I mean, we do have students from all over the UK. You know, I discovered we've got somebody from the Hebrides today, you know, so it's not just that, but yes, that is the majority of our students are coming from that wider, rather narrower geographic spread. We have a strong policy now, strategy rather, for UK recruitment. Some things that I've introduced that weren't happening before, stronger focus on London, which wasn't there. We do a lot of outreach work locally, so there's still a market, a very strong market. Sorry, I don't like using that word market as if it, but you know what I mean. There is still a strong market. There are still students who want to come to the university from the locality. Of course, we're not just Luton-based. We've got Bedford, we have a campus in Milton Keynes and a campus on Stoke Mandeville Hospital site for our nursing and health-related activity. So it's about recruiting to all of those, not just the Luton campus. 18-year-old, the number of 18-year-olds is dropping, so that's what I was saying about everybody fishing in the same pool. So it does require us to have a really strong message, and that strong message is career-powered education. You know, work experience, work-related learning, real-world learning, simulated learning. Though, so we're taking a very wide view of this. It's not just about going out and trying to find students. You've got to have a strong brand, and that brand is about success for you, your investment in your own success, and we'll be there with you. And it is about helping students to have the cultural capital that many of them don't have, sadly. They don't have families who've got experience that can be drawn on to find them a workplace and to find them a bit of, work experience. And that's where we have to step in. So it's all part of a much wider, it's not just about recruitment. It's a wider thing about the messaging and the brand that's so important.
Thank you. Next up, we've got Councillor Jabiri Hussain.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hello, Vice Chancellor. Good to see you
Good to
again.
see you again.
I'm heavily biased towards University of Bedfordshire, as you know, because I graduated from the university, seems like many years ago now, with a first-class honours degree in law. And it never stopped me. I think that's a very important message that we need to give out to our youngsters when they are deciding as to which university to go to, is that, University of Bedfordshire, has a proud record in preparing students not only for great education but also in employment. So on the point on employment, I'd like to know what is the university doing with regards to skilling up students, to prepare them for a very, very competitive jobs market, as you know.
Yes.
And it's difficult that, obviously, when they're competing with the likes of students from Oxford and Cambridge, as well as, other people who are previously employed or who are changing careers. So what are you doing additionally, and how can we help in ensuring that, the graduates, do get better prospects and job opportunities?
I think the main thing there is that all our courses are vocational. So they all have an orientation to work. But it's not, and so the skills are inside there, if you like, in the curriculum. But it's not just about the skills for the job, it's about soft skills as well. It's about how to talk, how to present, how to work in a team. It's about leadership. So we develop those other skills as well through the curriculum. So there's in the curriculum and kind of through the curriculum. And those soft skills are much more important than people often think. When we talk to employers, they do want students to have the knowledge and the right degree level and be, qualified, as it were. But they also want those presentational skills, the soft skills, initiative, You know, they want to know that students have done more than just study, you know. So things like volunteering are really important, and we do a lot of that through the Students' Union at the university. And we do a lot of work through our careers and employability team on preparing students for their LinkedIn profiles, their CVs, interview techniques, because, you know, a lot of our students don't, you know, they don't have anyone to talk to about that at home particularly. And they don't really understand the kinds of expectations that employers have about even how you dress. Something as simple as that for an interview can be not understood. So there's a lot of wraparound work we do to support students in preparing themselves, and to keep saying to them, you can do this. And we're doing this because, you know, because this is what's going on in the world that you'll be going into. So it's an exciting thing to be in, you know, really, to see the successes of students. We've got stuff around on the walls in the Luton campus and the Bedford campus, showcasing alumni. Not the totally famous ones, do you know what I mean? Not the ones, but like yourself, for example, but the alumni who've gone on to get great jobs and are coming back and giving back, you know, and we tell their little stories and so on, because they need role models. That's so important, and all of you can be role models for our students in some way. So it's really at the heart of what we do.
Thank you very much for attending council meeting this evening, Professor Bunting, and for answering our questions. You're most welcome to stay for the remainder of the meeting, but please feel free to leave if you wish.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The first item of business is to receive the minutes of the meeting of the Council held on 14th of November 2023 as set out on pages 6 to 14. Please note 2 corrections in the resolution to minute 111 on page 14 as shown on the note circulated around the Council chamber. The first is a removal of the last 3 bullet points which repeat earlier text. The second is the insertion of the words "and the Leader of the Opposition" in the final bullet point so that it reads, "A copy of this motion is to be sent to the Prime Minister, the Foreign Secretary and the Leader of the Opposition." Subject to that amendment, do all members agree the minutes as a correct record? Are there any apologies for absence for this meeting?
Mr Mayor, I've received apologies from councillors Abbas, Fry, Lovell, Khatija Malik, Nasser, Nichols, Petts and Shaw.
Noted. Are there any further apologies? Thank you. Members, please note that voting will be by exception. Rather than calling out each member's name to record their vote, I will ask members to indicate if they wish to vote against a motion. If no members vote against, I will declare the item carried. The outcome will not be recorded in the minutes unless 6 members of the Council indicate that they wish for this to happen, in accordance with Standing Orders 21.2. All members of the Council are invited to my charity event at the Park Afghan Hajra restaurant in Bute Street, Luton on Tuesday the 13th of February 2024 at 6:30 p.m. Tickets are available from the Mayor, Secretary and Business and Member Support at £28 per person from a set menu of meat or vegetarian option. It is my very sad duty to report the death of former Councillor Mrs Audrey Bush on Wednesday the 22nd of December 2023, aged 89. The late councillor was first elected to the council on 3rd May 1979 and served continuously for 11 years until the 2nd of May 1991. The late Councillor Bush was Deputy Mayor of the Council from 1982 to 1983 and Mayor from 1985 to 1986 and a member on various committees on the Council, including Environmental Health and Control, Planning and Recreation Services Committees, Highways Subcommittee, Arts and Sports Advisory Subcommittees and Lottery Subcommittee. Does any member wish to speak? Councillor Franks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There really aren't all that many members of the council, I guess, who were here at the time that Audrey Bush was a member. If there are, then it will be generally well known that Audrey and I didn't actually get on very well while she was on the council. But we became very good friends after she retired from the council, and she was in fact a constituent of mine for some years until she moved fairly recently, only about a year ago, to be nearer to her daughter. She was what I would call a regular customer. She cared very deeply about the area where she lived and was not shy of raising issues with her local councillors. I don't see that kind of resident as a nuisance. I see her as an asset for the area because she demonstrated every day that she really did care about the place where she lived. She's sadly missed by her daughter and her son-in-law and by her grandchildren. Unfortunately, her last year or two with her husband was slightly dampened by his Alzheimer's disease, but she cared for him with great dedication for a very long time before she finally conceded that she could no longer cope and he had to go into residential care. But they were a deeply loving couple who had a very long and very happy marriage, and I consider it to be a privilege to have got to know her better after she retired.
Thank you, Councillor Franks. Do any other members wish to speak? I would ask the Council to stand in silent tribute for 1 minute in memory of the late Councillor Mrs. Audrey Bush. Thank you, everyone.
Mr. Mayor, all members of the Council have been circulated with a list of items before the Council this evening which fall within the ambit of Section 106 of the Local Government Finance Act of 1992. Any member affected should disclose the fact and refrain from voting on any question relating to those items. Mr. Mayor, I have received no Section 106 disclosures. I've also received no disclosures of interest.
I call upon Councillor Burnett to present the report of the Bedfordshire Fire and Rescue Authority as set out on pages 15 to 17.
Thank you. The report is presented to everybody. I just would like to draw my colleagues' attentions to a few things. So I'd like to draw my colleagues with regards to the awareness that the cruise has been experienced navigating some of the parking issues in the town. So I think it's really important that I should bring that to my colleagues' attention. The service is looking at different smaller vehicles for the narrow roads, but can I ask you all, when you speak to your residents, to please assist in being conscientious of the emergency services? That would really help. And also, I would like to bring your attention that the fire service is out for consultation. It finishes on the 16th of February with regards to response. It is really, really important that we get your feedback, because how we respond and how we decide our key performance indicators is fed back from our residents. So please encourage them to take part before we finalise that. And as you all know, the excellent service that the fire service provided when we had the fire up at the airport, I know my colleagues were really thankful for that. And also we are developing, I just wanted to make you aware about our cadets and apprentice. So please encourage any person that wants to get involved with the fire service, because we should be diverse and represent with the community that we serve. But if people don't get engaged and see and get involved in the cadets, that won't happen. I'm happy to take any questions that anybody might have on the shout, or any improvements you may want. Please let me know. That's it, Mayor.
Is the motion seconded? Are there any questions? Does the council receive the report? Thank you. With regards to agenda item 8, there are no written questions this evening of the Bedfordshire Fire and Rescue Authority. The next item is agenda item 9.1, a recommendation from the Executive on setting the council tax base for 2024 to 25. Would Councillor Roach please move the recommendations?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the recommendation set out at paragraph 2 on page 18. Thank you.
Is the motion seconded? Are there any questions? Yep. Councillor Wynne.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A request for a policy for the portfolio holder, if I may. I have had requests from 2 of my residents who, when subsequently this is actioned in form of their council tax bills, for a comprehensive explanation of how we get from the council tax bands to the percentages that appear on their council tax statement, because it's very far from straightforward to be able to verify whether the figures that are on the council tax statements are in fact in line with the proposals.
I'll take that back, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. That request.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Are there any amendments? Does any member wish to speak to the motion? The motion is before the council. Does any member vote against the proposal? The motion is carried. The next item is agenda item 10.1, the report of the independent panel on members' allowances. I invite the chair of the independent panel, Alicia Borneo Ngeta, to present the report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chair. Good evening, councillors. Today, as the Chair, I'm here to present to you the report of the Independent Remuneration Panel, which have sat and met over the last few months, deliberating the best approach to the remuneration for councillors. Volunteering is the ultimate exercise in democracy. You vote in elections once a year, but when you volunteer, you vote every day about the kind of community you want to live in. And we recognise and appreciate all the time our councillors spend volunteering in their communities to make it a better place and a place that they want to live in. The remuneration panel has been created under the Local Authorities Members Allowance England Regulation 2001, and it's under this legislation that we sit and we met. Whilst deliberating, members paid significant attention to the hours put in by the councillors. We have also met with a few councillors to get their feedback and to engage with them how much work is carried out during their time as councillors. The workload for members is significant, including reading officers' reports, possessing extensive knowledge of local government, finance and funding, being accessible to constituents, conducting surgeries, and adequately preparing and asking relevant questions before meetings. The panel discussed how the role and responsibilities of elected members within a unitary authority have undergone substantial changes since 2009 and is continuously evolving. With that said, the policy intention behind the requirement of councillors is one that is voluntary, and we have taken that into consideration, whilst also balancing that no councillor should be left out of pocket whilst carrying out their duties. With that said, the panel also deliberated and debated and concluded that members' allowances scheme are not intended to attract candidates for council by paying a full market rate, but rather for the desire to serve local communities and residents is the prime motive for being a councillor. It is with this in mind, and bearing in mind also that there has been somewhat of a temporary freeze on councillors' allowance for Luton Borough Council, that for the past 14 years, might I say, that the panel recommends that the council approve that councillors' basic allowance be increased to £9,815 per year, an increase from £7,500, which I must say has been stagnant for the past 14 odd years. The panel recommends that this and all further recommendations be applied from the 1st of April 2024. We also recommend that allowances be adjusted in line with local government pay award for NJC staff applicable from the 1st of April each year until another review is implemented. We also recommend that the formula for calculating the Special Responsibilities Allowance, or SRAs, paid to councillors is not changed from last year's rates. That is, they remain calculated as a proportion of the basic allowance, except for the deputy leaders, which we recommend should be increased to 1 time the basic allowance. We also recommend that the allowance will be payable to the leader of any duly constituted minority group with a minimum of 5 members. In the event of more than one minority group having 5 members, the SRA will be paid to both minority group leaders. In the event of no minority group having 5 or more residents and no other special responsibilities allowance being paid to a member of a duly constituted minority group, the allowance shall be paid to the leader of the largest minority group. The panel further recommends that with regard to the councillors or a councillor sitting on the fostering panel, it is recommended that the panel pay no additional special responsibilities to that councillor, as there is no legal obligation for the council to have a councillor in that position. The panel acknowledges that councillors who choose to take on this supplementary role will have additional reading and responsibilities in order to stay up to date. However, this should be considered as part of their voluntary commitment as councillors. Thank you for your time, and open for any questions.
I call upon Councillor Simmons to move the recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And firstly, could I take the opportunity to thank the independent panel? I know we've got other members of it in the town hall today. We've taken a fair amount of time to really give a good review of members' allowances, which, as you say, have not been increased since 2009. That's 15 years. During those years that covered austerity in the COVID pandemic, members would not consider increasing allowances, which has meant that our allowance is now very much lower than many other councils across the country. The independent panel, I believe, have taken that into account with their review this year, which I believe is a very fair report and looks at to put in place an annual adjustment that will assist in bringing the allowances into line with other local authorities over time. So I would recommend to Council that we agree the recommendations 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 and 7. However, I would ask Council to refer back to the independent panel recommendation 5 concerning the fostering panel and their current recommendation not to pay an allowance to members who sit on this panel. We believe that the independent panel probably were not fully aware of the important role the fostering panel perform and the importance of member involvement in that panel is today. It is integral to Luton being a child-friendly town. It is a time-consuming role, both in terms of reading all the paperwork that is there, but also the regular day-long meetings. But it is important that members have an influence on who foster our children. So the importance of that panel, I think, has not quite been made important enough to the panel. So we would like the opportunity to discuss this further with the panel. So we would ask members to defer this recommendation at this current time and to include this in the future independent panel work programme that I note is at item 14 of Appendix 1. Thanks again to all the panel members for your hard work, and I ask Council to support the recommendations as I have outlined.
Okay, so Councillor Simmons, I've been advised that what we just said about point 5 is considered as an amendment. So we'll have to take a vote on the whole, or you'll have to submit an amendment.
Okay, we'll take it as an amendment then.
Okay, yeah, is the motion seconded?
Seconded, Mr. Mayor.
At this point, are there any questions? Are there any amendments?
Yes, I move the amendment for the fostering panel. Would ask members, would ask members to actually, we were thinking of deferring it and asking the independent panel to review it again.
So you're asking for deferring number 5?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Is that amendment seconded?
Seconded, Mr. Mayor.
Questions?
He's already spoken to it, and maybe the speakers to the end.
Okay, Councillor Simmons has spoken to the amendment. Are there any other speakers to this particular amendment? Okay. I now call upon the seconder of the amendment to speak. Councillor Javed Hussain, do you wish to speak on the amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with my fellow colleague, Councillor colleague Hazel Edmonds.
Yes? Yeah. So the amendment is before the council. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. All those against, please show. Any abstentions? The motion is carried. The amendment is carried. Yeah. Are there any further amendments? Right. Now, does any member wish to speak to the motion as amended by Amendment 1? Okay, Councillor Wynne.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have to say that I thought the report was very well considered. My own view is that it introduces something which is well overdue, which is that we should link future allowances for councillors through to average wages and so on within the council as defined in the report. I do, however, feel from my own perspective, and I know this isn't shared with a number of my colleagues, but I do believe that this is not the right time for us to increase the members' allowances to the extent that the report is suggesting. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers to the motion? Okay. The motion as amended is before the council. Does any member vote against the proposal? As a vote against has been shown, members will be asked to cast their vote individually.
Councillor Ahmed. Councillor Ajizol. 4. Councillor A. Ali.
4.
Councillor U. Ali.
4.
Councillor Ambier.
4.
Councillor Baker.
4.
Councillor F. Begum.
4.
Councillor Y. Begum.
4.
Councillor Bridgen.
4.
Councillor Burnett.
4.
Councillor Chowdhury.
4.
Councillor Farouk.
4.
Councillor Franks.
4.
Councillor Gallagher.
4.
Councillor Hanif.
4.
Councillor J. Hussain.
4.
Councillor J. I. Hussain.
4.
Councillor M. Hussain.
4.
Councillor S. Hussain.
4.
Councillor Isles. Councillor Keynes.
Absent, not present.
Councillor A. Khan. Councillor Alia Khan.
4.
Councillor Mahmood. 4. Councillor Malik. Councillor Marshall.
4.
Councillor Mead.
4.
Councillor Miller.
Against.
Councillor Moore.
4.
Councillor Raja.
4.
Councillor Roche.
4.
Councillor Salim.
4.
Councillor Simmons.
4.
Councillor Steer.
4.
Councillor Stevens.
4.
Councillor D. Taylor.
4.
Councillor J. Taylor.
4.
Councillor Underwood. 4. Councillor Wynne.
Against.
The motion is carried. The next item is agenda item 11.1, appointment of the independent members to the Audit and Governance Committee. I call upon Councillor Burnett to move the recommendation.
I move the recommendation set out at paragraph 2.1 to 2.3 on pages 41 to 42.
Is the motion seconded? Are there any questions? Are there any amendments? Does any member wish to speak to the motion? The motion is before the council. Does any member vote against the proposal? The motion is carried. The next item of business is the notice of motion set out at agenda item 12.1. I call upon Councillor Fatima Begum to move the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Honourable Council members, guests, colleagues and residents of Luton, I stand before you today to propose a motion that holds the power to make a lasting impact on our community, a motion centred on fostering awareness and support for organ donation. It is a subject that carries immense weight, involving the selfless act of giving life to another, a subject very close to my heart. Today, I stand before you not as a councillor or as a speaker, but someone whose life has profoundly been touched by the extraordinary gift of organ donation. My journey into this topic is deeply personal, and I would like to share the experience with you all today. Many of you here already know that my journey in this topic started when I was in school doing my GCSEs, when my kidneys failed, which meant I needed to be on dialysis. I was on dialysis for 5 years, waiting for a transplant. Whilst waiting for transplant, I underwent various forms of dialysis, including 4 times a day, overnight, or 3 times a week in hospital. Each of those dialysis sessions had its own complications, affecting my ability to lead a normal, everyday life. For example, I had to sit still on a chair for 3 hours with my hand strapped like this to prevent movements that could dislodge the 2 large needles in my arm, risking severe injury to the fistula and significant blood loss. Being on dialysis can lead to various health issues, including diabetes, blood clots, high blood pressure, regular infection, weakness, and excessive fluid retention, which limited mobility. I was one of those who developed high blood pressure, fluid retention, and infection that caused me to be in a coma for 2 days in 2008. During this time, I was not allowed to eat most food or drinks that we take for granted today. For example, I was only allowed to have 4 to 6 chips a day, half a banana. If I had a half a banana that day, I could not eat anything else other that contains potassium, such as jacket potato. I was not allowed to drink more than 500 to 500 ml, which is this size, for 24 hours. Being a tea drinker, this was extremely difficult for me. I was allowed to have maximum of 4 digestive biscuits a day, just to name a few. I had my first kidney transplant in 2009, which worked for 13 years. I was one of those lucky people who only had to wait for 5 years. I then had to go back on dialysis when my first kidney failed for my second transplant in September 2022, last year. Being on the waiting list as someone who falls under Black, Asian, and ethnic minority community, I consider myself lucky that I was only waiting for 5 years. I have witnessed people at that time who were waiting up to 20 years. So when I talk about organ donation, it's not a distant concept for me. It's a reminder of the fragility and resilience of life and the potential we all have to be someone else's hero. Excuse me. I stand here today not only advocating for a cause, but also testifying to the profound impact it can have on real lives. I witnessed firsthand the profound impact of one person's choice that can make on another person's life. It wasn't just about medical procedure, it was a narrative of resilience, compassion, and the extraordinary power of human connection. The selflessness of individuals, someone I will never know, became a lifeline for me and my family. Thank you. Thank you. The selflessness of individual, someone I will never know, became the lifeline for me and my family. Because when you fall unwell, it's not just us that suffers, it's our family. The single decision to donate organ transformed tragedy into a second chance. It's a depth of gratitude that words can hardly express, yet it fuels my passion for advocating for a cause of organ donation. Each organ donor is a silent hero, leaving a permanent mark on the lives they touch. Through their generosity, they offer the precious gift of life, enabling someone else to breathe, to see, to love, to dream. I am living proof of this. After the transplant, I was able to travel to other countries to see one of the 7 wonders of the world, swim in the Red Sea, become a guardian, have a career, and more importantly, eat and drink to my heart's content. To those who have already chosen the path of organ donation, I salute you. Your selflessness illuminates the human spirit. For those who may still be contemplating this decision, I encourage you to reflect on the extraordinary impact you can have on another person's life. To remind and inform those who do not know, the NHS states that one organ donor can save up to 9 lives with multiple organ and tissue donations. On average, 3 people die every day waiting for an organ. 30% of people waiting for a transplant are from Black, Asian, and ethnic minority communities. I won't do too much statistics. I think one of my colleagues will cover that. I urge you to consider the far-reaching effect of this motion can have on the lives of our residents, especially those from Black, Asian, and ethnic minority communities. It is a call to action that encourages education, dispels myths, and empowers individuals to make informed decisions about organ donation. By creating a supportive environment, we can inspire more members of our community to register as organ donors, potentially saving countless lives. Let us be a beacon of compassion and solidarity. By endorsing this motion, we send a clear message that our community stands united in promoting the gift of life. Organ donation is an opportunity for us to leave a lasting legacy of humanity, resilience, and empathy. Lastly, I would like to thank few people that have been working on this topic. Tharsim Pool, who's around here somewhere, Chair of Organ Donation Committee, for all his support. Gurch Randhawa for doing research and publishing a book on organ donation in Islam and continuously raising awareness. University of Bedfordshire for raising awareness and doing activities during Organ Donation Awareness Week. I hope that we all can do the same, do more raising awareness of this, especially during Organ Donation Week, which is this year, falls 23rd September to 29th. With that, I move the motion on item 12.1. Thank you.
Is the motion seconded?
Seconded, Mr. Mayor.
Are there any questions? Are there any amendments? Does any member wish to speak to the motion? Okay, thank you. Right. First up, I've got Councillor Salim.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Fatima. A recent NHS blood transplant survey found that 84% of the UK population who were surveyed believed that they ought to speak to their loved ones and their close family about their views on organ donation, and yet only 40% had done that. And Luton and Dunstable Hospital tell us that this year, as previous years, demand has increased for donors. The need for demand for donors has increased from all backgrounds, but unfortunately many people aren't matched, and tragically we see people, as referenced by Fatima, passing away because we're not able to meet that demand. Last year, a doctor from Luton and Dunstable who was working in A&E addressed Labour councillors, and he described that one of the most heartbreaking parts of his work were witnessing the death of children who were on the organ donation waiting list, knowing that had the right donor been found in a timely fashion, that their lives could have been saved. And he implored us, as councillors, to raise awareness amongst Black and Asian communities, because in his words, there was proportionately more need within that community, but people from those backgrounds were less likely to be registered. So just looking at a few statistics, at present there are over 250 children in the UK waiting for an organ transplant, and 650 have been diagnosed with leukemia. And last year, over 125 donors came forward from Black and Asian communities, and yet Black and Asian communities received over 1,000 donations. So unfortunately, people from those backgrounds have a longer waiting time to be matched. So Fatima, again, thank you so much. That was so moving, and I think that this motion will increase the number of people who register with Anthony Nolan and will potentially help those who are suffering from leukemia. And just taking part in Organ Donation Week will mean that those conversations and that awareness that is raised will save lives. And at a time that is most tragic for families, knowing that you can stop another family suffering the pain that you have suffered, is indeed a miracle and is indeed the greatest gift, which is the gift of life. So I hope, I don't believe that anybody would not want to support this motion. Fatima, thank you.
Thank you. Next up, I've got Councillor Mahmood Hussain.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, Fatima, we are so pleased to hear your success. Can I say that I also have a member of my family, my son-in-law's sister. She was the youngest person to receive a heart transplant. And she's 35 years of age now and living a very healthy life. It is very important for all communities, and specifically ethnic minority communities, to be the donor. Because particularly, as my colleague reminded us all, it's not just the children, it's of all ages of people that need the donation. And I think we ought to make an example. I hope that, like myself, all the councillors have done the honourable thing to sign the donor's card. And if they haven't, please do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next I've got Councillor Alia Khan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to thank Councillor Fatima Begum for such an emotional and such an inspiring and courageous speech today. I think it's very, very brave for her to come out and share her story like this at a time when there's a lot of misinformation within our communities. And I stand today speaking as, first and foremost, a Muslim representative, someone who is the daughter of someone who has chronic kidney disease and will potentially one day need a transplant, and as someone who has a family member who has had a transplant. And I also stand as a proud registrar of the organ donor, as well as the registrar of Anthony Nolan. And I think at a time where there is such misinformation, I think it's important that I remind and urge members to remind communities that actually the Muslim Sharia Council in 1995 did issue a fatwa to say that organ donation is permissible. And I'd like to also share a verse from the Quran, if allowed, and that is, if anyone saves a life, it is as if he saves the lives of all mankind. And with this, I'd like to interpret this, and I hope many members here would interpret this as organ donation being a blessed act, and that it is something to move forward. And because of organ donation, I'm very pleased to be able to use the years that Fatima's been given to enjoy her friendship, because we have become really good friends and not just colleagues. And I'm very, very grateful and thankful. And once again, thank you so much for bringing this motion forward.
Okay, next up we've got Councillor Javed Hussain.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm truly pleased that this motion has been brought to the Council. I think it's way overdue, and it gives me immense pleasure to be able to fully support it. What could be a better gift? Giving somebody a quality of life, the gift of life. And, it's an act of, when you're not selfish, you want to share your health. What more can you do? And I fully support it. And I hope everybody can support this motion and we can help our communities.
I've got a number of councillors. Because members, please show again who wants to ask make a comment. So, okay, yep. Okay, thank you. Right, yes, thank you. So can I go to Councillor Aslam Khan next?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, I'd like to thank Councillor Fatima for sharing such an emotional story that which resonates with me, as my father also had a chronic kidney disease and he was on dialysis for about 4 years. So I understand the impact that it has on a patient, but also on a wider family. You need to care for that person, not just for those moments when they have dialysis, but throughout the week, both physically and emotionally. It does take a toll. I do know, working in the pharmaceutical industry, and working with the health sector, that Luton has one of the highest prevalence rates for type 2 diabetes. And type 2 diabetes, eventually, if uncontrolled, leads to kidney failure. And for black community, they're more likely to get blood pressure, which eventually affects your kidneys and the heart. Unfortunately, a lot of now younger people are suffering from heart disease and kidney disease. My father, God bless him, he lived till 86, most of his life of good quality. But for those younger people with the whole life ahead of them and needing a transplant and living a really poor quality of life, could be improved if we had more people donating. And I think there are certain barriers, both culturally and because of misunderstanding of perhaps faith. For those people who hold faith close to their heart, do give a lot financially and also volunteer, but somehow they're not willing to donate organs. And I think that misunderstanding could be improved by us all going out there and improving that awareness, and perhaps the religious leaders could do a lot more to clear that misunderstanding. So I'm more than happy to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, I've got Councillor Steve Moore.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Councillor Fatima for what was a very passionate plea that myself really got hard, but I'd like to come to something you mentioned, Tamira, when you talked about the sheer percentage of people who say they should discuss this issue with their friends and family, and they don't. I never had that issue because me, being a kid like me, found when rummaging my great father's wallet when I was a kid and found the old-fashioned little donor cards. He gave blood 125 times. He was on the organ donor list from basically the time I was diagnosed with my form of cerebral palsy. And as a result of that, I never had that issue. Now, lots of people put it off, never do it. Now, unfortunately, when my father passed away last year, he was unable to donate those organs because, unfortunately, as my mum would put it, the cancer had riddled right through his body, so there was nothing less usable. But I can tell you for a fact how disappointed he would have been, because I saw it firsthand when he survived cancer the first time, and he was told he was no longer allowed to give blood. And I'll tell you what, I don't think I ever saw him so angry and disappointed in his life, so I can imagine how he would have felt if somebody had told him that. But that would be true of anyone that went through their whole lives putting it off, and never discussing it with their family, never getting that little card, or never signing up to a register, and finding out one day that it's then too late. So just make sure if you're going to do it, there's no better time than today. There's no better time than right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Next up, I've got Councillor Javeer Hussain.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And firstly, thank you to my colleague Fatima for sharing your story. You are incredibly brave, but you have been quite courageous in your battle, and you still continue to battle, because not everything is as normal for you, but you are trying your level best, as well as doing some great work as an elected representative as well. It is important that, particularly from our ethnic communities, that organ donation is talked about seriously, and there is a drive to increase donations. Last year, I was very proud amongst the University of Bedfordshire, Luton Sixth Form College, Luton Rising, to be involved in the very first swab week that was organised at the educational establishments to increase the National Register drive to tackle blood cell donations, and also via the Anthony Nolan Trust. And that's something that, again, that's going to be taking place this year. It's really important that when it comes to ethnic communities, that they take and participate and do whatever they can to support the life of another, because I mean, as many of my colleagues have shared their own personal stories, when it happens to you, then that's when it really hits hard. But if any little way that we can do to support such an important initiative, and obviously to support firstly the motion and International Swab Week and also the Organ Donation Week as well, then please do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we've got Councillor Amjad Ali.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A lot of what I wanted to say has already been said, so I won't repeat all of that again. But something in addition, I mean, Fatima, that was a very emotional story. To be fair, most of the details I wasn't even aware of until you mentioned them now. So, bravo to you for actually holding in there and coming across all of this, all of these couple of decades. When it comes to sort of organ donations or giving blood, I'd just like to refer back to a local hospital that we've built back in my area where my parents are from. And yesterday I received a report from them that they have a thalassemia machine, so about 3 machines, and in total in the last 12 months since they've been active, there's about 80 patients that have actually used those services, and they use them on a regular basis. So you'd expect something like that where, it's predominantly a Muslim population, that there'll be a lot of people that want to donate. But in fact, even in that area, organ donation or kidney transplants, etc., are very, very challenging. So I think one of the key points for the Bedfordshire Hospital Organ Donations Committee is to actually reach out to our religious leaders within our community and make sure that this conversation is something that becomes mainstream, and because I think the key is with them. And there's a lot of stigma around organ donations and etc. So I don't want to go into too much detail of it, but I think that is a real key after this meeting here. I'm sure all of my colleagues will be supporting this, but I think that probably is the key on where we can find some success in increasing the organ donation numbers. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Burnett.
What I first want to say is, Fatima, is well done. Well done, because that is really, really hard to have done, and I'm so proud of you. And it's a privilege to, if you never moved the motion as hard as it was, we wouldn't be having this conversation now, because as politicians, we're always having to dig at each other. But today we're not. We're supporting our colleague in what she has on her heart to move. And that is really beautiful to see. And I totally agree with my colleagues. This is a conversation we have to have within our community, but with our faith leaders. Actually, you moving the motion actually takes me back some years when somebody that I grew up in church actually suddenly died. And when the doctors had tried to have a conversation with his parents, it was the wrong time. They just wouldn't listen. So for the Christians and believing in the resurrection, there's a conversation that needs to be had within this space, within the church leaders, because that is the barrier. I can see it because I saw it there and then. The mother would not enter any form of conversation. And it's really incumbent on us to remember there's conversations we need to have, because as there's life, there is death. And we need to have conversations with our loved ones about organ, but about will, about our wishes, because when those time comes, those that are left cannot cope. They're going through the grief. So I'm really thankful for you to bring in this. And I ask our community leaders, everybody, please have a conversation, because it's all well and do you bringing this, but if our faith leaders do not have those conversations with their congregation, we're going to be in the same position 10 years later, and we're begging for help and nothing happens. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Before I bring in Councillor Umi Ali, who's the secretary of the motion, is there anyone else who wishes to speak to the motion? Okay. Councillor Umi Ali.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm really honoured to second this motion from Councillor Begum. I think a lot of the things I wanted to say have been covered, but I would say as someone from the other side, so one of the people that probably would have told Fatima you can't have 10 cups of tea or you can only have half a banana, I've seen firsthand the impact that these organ donations have to the families of the children that I see and their families. And a big thank you to the NHS who's supporting all these people as well. I think from what I can hear today is that people are really, really passionate about this topic, and I hope that it can help us move forward to promote it to our friends, to our families, to our communities, and work together across party to make sure that people like Fatima can continue to get organ donations. I'm so, so proud of you, Fatima. I'm so happy that you brought that up today. Thank you. I'll stop there. Bye.
Thank you. The motion is before the council. Does any member vote against the proposal? The motion is carried. The next item of business is set out agenda item 12.2 on the agenda. I call upon Councillor Stevens to move the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The rationale for this motion is not to mitigate against or indeed impede riders from using their pedal cycles and eligible powered pedal cycles in pedestrianised George Street and Manchester Street. It's not also a mechanism to try and deprive the various international students, and they are primarily international students, that we see in George Street for trying to earn some part-time money to help with their living costs by doing fast food delivery on their bikes. The purpose is to highlight the need to urgently segregate in some way pedal bike users from pedestrians, but especially from children, the elderly, and those with disabilities, whilst at the same time trying to dissuade users of e-scooters and high-powered electric bikes from riding in these areas before there is a serious injury or fatality. I mean, I'm sure that you've all gone through George Street and you've seen maybe an electric scooter, an e-scooter coming zooming through at 30 miles an hour. We cannot allow this to continue. We cannot allow the bike users, the scooter users, just to ride anywhere in any direction, because that is appearing to happen at the present time. I don't know if other councillors have elderly residents in their wards who've cited the reluctance to come into the town centre in part because of the dangers from bikes and scooters users. I've certainly met them in South Ward. This is not just a visceral fear, this is a realistic fear. You only need to look at the kind of statistics that come from the Department for Transport, and I have to ask for forgiveness because I've only got the 2021 figures. But in 2021, 531 pedestrians were involved in incidents with cyclists, according to the DFT. Whilst I do not have statistics for Luton, I mean, maybe the highways might be able to get these statistics, I am aware that last year an 80-year-old gentleman was hospitalised after a collision with someone riding a unicycle on Hatters Way, Luton. And as to e-scooters, in 2022 there was 1 death, 60 serious injuries, 172 slight injuries caused to pedestrians nationally by e-scooters. And the trend for e-scooters is not going to diminish. It's obviously a form of transport that especially is appealing to young people. Transport charity Collaborative Mobility UK estimates that there are already 750,000 privately owned e-scooters in use in the UK. Well, let's consider some potential solutions. Whilst many towns and cities are grappling with these problems, in Luton we also have an additional issue in that we have a national cycle highway running through George Street. If this is not to remain some kind of anachronistic scheme on paper, we do need to provide a carefully marked out cycleway through the town centre to protect users and pedestrians. I've spoken to Highways. They see the need already. They could develop a scheme. We now have funds to develop the town centre. Some of these funds could be used for this purpose as a priority action. Of course, alternatively, we could adopt the Coventry model and ban all these modes of transport through our pedestrian areas and set fines for those who breach the rules. But by so doing, we would need to find an alternative national highways route through the town for our cyclists. On e-scooters, we definitely need a better steer from the national government on the way ahead, but we need to look ourselves at creative ways to dissuade both these riders and those using high-powered cycles from using the pedestrianised roads in the town centre. And I would hope that the executive, together with the officers in the town hall, can put their heads together and come up with some arguments and some key schemes, both to try to put these cycleways into being and to help find some solutions to dissuade the continued use of e-scooters and high-powered electric bikes in the town. I so move, Mr. Mayor.
Is the motion seconded?
Seconded, Mayor.
Are there any questions? Are there any amendments?
Amendment, Mr. Mayor.
Proceed, Councillor Simmons. I can see the amendments being circulated around the chamber. I'll give members a few minutes to take in the amendment, and then I'll go back to Councillor Simmons to move the amendment. Okay, another few seconds on that one. Okay. Now I'll call upon Councillor Simmons to put the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We agree with the thrust of the motion that's before us this evening. We've all experienced the e-scooters. There's one that almost gets me every morning as I go across to Costa's, and one day I think he's going to manage. So it's a growing issue in George Street and in other pedestrian areas. So we sympathise with what you're trying to do here. However, the enforcement of e-scooters is with the police, so there's not an awful lot the council and our enforcement team can do about it. So we really need to work with our police partners on how we deal with this whole issue. So it won't be sensible to pass a resolution which says everything but actually doesn't have an output about how we're going to solve it. And one of the biggest issues around this is resources and how we fund it. So we've amended the motion to put an instruction in there that gives a clear agenda to the Chief Exec to bring back a report telling us how we're going to take this forward in whatever way, whether it be highways improvements or whether it be work with the police on how they're going to actually offer us a solution, if anything, from the police on what, and the Police and Crime Commissioner, what's their strategy? They must be having to deal with that throughout Bedfordshire. So I hope that this amendment is actually, if you can see, it's trying to support what you're trying to do. So I would hope to incorporate it in what your resolution already says. And let's see if we can really bring some solution to this in the longer term.
Is the amendment seconded?
Seconded, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Are there any other speakers to the amendment? Sorry, I've been advised. Councillor Stevens, do you accept the amendment?
I accept the amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Hussain, Javidus.
Thank you.
Okay, yes, because Councillor Stevens has accepted the amendment, we will now add it to the main debate that we're going to have on the motion as amended. So, are there any other amendments? Okay, now, Councillor Stevens, can you just turn your mic off? Sorry. Thank you. So now, does any member wish to speak to the motion as amended? Okay, Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you. As portfolio holder for Highways and Sustainable Transport, I agree with your original motion that we need to resolve and look at it. Now, some of this will get picked up as part of the LC WIP work that we did, and we signed off the policy in executive a few months ago. Also, I just want to make it clear that really the e-scooters, when we had the option to do it here, we definitely didn't accept it. We had a trial option. We were offered that, and we said we're not going to make our residents guinea pigs. We didn't take the e-scooter, even though we were offered money. But I think the key thing here is that I sit on the Road Safety Partnership, and I can assure you that I already lobbied them to say that the police need to do it. So any bike or any e-scooter that goes over 15.5 miles needs to be insured. And that is actually a police function. Now, when I saw your motion, I read up on it. And it's clearly that the police have the powers to confiscate and crush it. And if they confiscated and crushed a few of them, I think we'd see definitely. So I would urge my colleagues that sit on the police crime panel to raise it with Festus, to say that the police should, even if they did every now and again did a week surge, if we picked up some of these e-scooters and we crushed them, that would actually take away one nuisance. Then we've got the bike one separately, but any bike that goes over 15.5, but the issue is they're actually, technically they're not insured. At 15.5 they should have insurance, and some of them I know can go up to 30 miles an hour. Problem is there's no license plates, there's no insurance, there's no helmet regulation, which is crazy.
Councillor Aslam Khan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think from what I read, there's two parts to this motion. One is providing infrastructure, and the other is enforcement. Yes, we need to work with the police to encourage them to enforce whatever the strategy they have. But the important thing is here, you have to give provision. You're not going to put an end to these e-scooters, and there needs to be a definition between mobility scooters and high-powered bicycles. Now, if they're going to be here to stay, you've got cycle lanes already. Now, if they are not marked properly, people are going to drive them everywhere, wherever they choose to. And I think what the motion is quite clearly saying, that if the cycle lanes exist, they're not visible. They need to be visible. And if they're not there, we need to create that provision. Because if you look at the high street at the moment, it's designed for families and elderly to come and shop in a very safe environment. And I have been almost a victim of being run over by them. So either we stop them, if we can't, then we have to provide some kind of provision so they can ride in a safe environment and people can shop safely.
Thank you. Next up, I've got Councillor Rob Roach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, I fully support what we've done here tonight with the motion and the amendment side of the motion, and fully support where you're coming from in relation to what your motion suggested. But I think I want to look at the reality of it, and this is the reality. There's a lot of people using these scooters in town who don't know they're illegal. I'm a cyclist. You go downstairs underneath this town hall, you will see them there. People come to work in this town hall. So we do have to look at enforcement, we do have to look at infrastructure, but we also have to look at the fact there are people who don't know they're illegal and they think they're going about their business on a daily basis with no problem at all. So we need to take that into consideration as well. You see them come out from Barnfield College, you see them come out from the university, you see them come out from schools, you just see them everywhere you are, everywhere you go. So I just want to add that bit of caution of the reality. that make sure that, you know, when we do come back and we have this discussion again, that we make sure we understand the reality is there's a lot of people who don't know they're illegal and they're fitting to going round about their business in the right way. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, I've got Councillor Amjad Ali.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think from my Labour colleagues, the emphasis is a lot more on e-scooters and the enforcement of it. However, what we're trying to achieve here with this motion and what Councillor Stevens has put forward is that we need dedicated cycle lanes. Yes, I mean, e-scooters and all that is an issue. However, one of our main aims here is actually to establish cycle lanes. Now, we do have a cycle area, but they are not. We do have a cycle area, but they're not exactly marked out. So, you know, you've got people going into the pedestrian area, so pedestrians, cyclists, etc., walking together. So what we need is, you know, from the council side, just a bit more effort to make sure that we've got dedicated, marked out cycle lanes throughout the St. George's Square and on the other side. So I think that's what we're trying to achieve here, although we accept your amendment and we do appreciate the fact that the police need to do a lot more to enforce the e-scooters, etc. But, I mean, let's repivot this conversation on exactly what we're asking for here at the same time as well.
Are there any further speakers to this motion as amended? Councillor Wynne?
So I understood I was allowed to come in at the end, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, there's two parts to this. Yes, we totally understand what you're saying there, Councillor Roach, about the e-cycles and the e-bikes. It's not just that. If you just spend a few moments outside this town hall and you look at some of the e-bikes that are going along, you notice a distinct absence of pedalling, which shows that those bikes have in fact been adapted, which is very easy to do, I have to say. You can both change the chip on the bike to increase the speed. You can also get rid of the requirement to be able to actually pedal, and quite a few, even of the delivery bikes, you'll find have a hand throttle fitted, which stops them having to pedal. So it's a complex subject. I do believe that part of it is police, but part of it also is because we made life complicated for ourselves as a council. We actually made it a pedestrianised area, despite the fact that there was a national cycle highway going through it, which didn't help because that's just confused the issue. So in referring this through, which I believe is correct for proper consideration through the auspices of the Chief Executive, I do think we ought to consider whether or not we would be allowed, for example, to mark out one area, even if it was only by lining the area, so that there is a restricted part of George Street, for example, which was allowed as the cycle highway. I remain to see what's possible, but don't please confuse the legal e-bikes with some of the e-bikes you see in the town centre. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. The motion is before the council. Does any member vote against the proposal? The motion is carried. That concludes the business for this meeting. I thank you for your attendance.